So, I will not talk about the long history of the accumulation of these irritants, these direct threats. This includes NATO, the elimination of the rights of the Russian-speaking population of Ukraine, the elimination of linguistics, educational media, culture, the ban on the Ukrainian Orthodox Church, and much more. Books are destroyed there. They take Russian books out of libraries and simply send them to waste paper. Hitler burned books, and Ukrainians send books for destruction in a different way. When I spoke with Madam Prime Minister today, she asked me when could this end? Many people ask us, when can this end? And what can Russia do? This is not a question for us. Because those who follow the developments of events know that President Putin emphasizes in almost every speech, when responding to the appropriate appeal, that we are not against negotiations. And it was not we who disrupted the signing of the peace treaty back in April 2022, when shortly after the start of our operation, the Ukrainians proposed negotiations. And they themselves in Istanbul gave us a set of principles on which they proposed signing the treaty. And we agreed with this. But when the agreement itself was made, entirely on the basis of Ukrainian proposals, which was approved by both us and the Ukrainians, then the Americans and the British forbade them to sign it, although the place where the presidents would meet had already been discussed. They forbade it to be signed, saying that if the Russians are ready to negotiate like this, it means they are weak. That means something else can be squeezed out of them. Let's exhaust them more. This has been going on ever since. When we are asked whether it is possible to complete this process, whether negotiations have any prospects, we need to remember that Zelensky signed a decree a year ago, legally prohibiting any negotiations with the Russian government under the leadership of Putin. He simply forbade it. He offered a peace formula, which the West now calls the only basis for settlement. In addition to the innocent names to distract attention, such as food security, energy and nuclear security, this formula contains what they need. That is, they need to push Russia back to the borders of 1991. This means that we must give them Russian Crimea and Russian Donbas. Secondly, the Russian leadership needs to be brought to justice at a special tribunal. And Russia must pay reparations, as much as Ukraine asks. After this there will be a peace treaty. It is this formula, that the West, being serious people, calls the only basis for negotiations. At least those elites who have now seized power in most Western countries, and who have no historical memory, speak precisely from such positions. Rare and sensible voices are drowned there. Therefore, instead of negotiations on this completely unacceptable idiotic basis, they demand that Russia be inflicted with a strategic defeat on the battlefield. They declare that there can only be surrender, and this is by definition impossible, or a solution to the problem on the battlefield. There is no other choice. If they come to their senses, and if they understand that supporting the Nazi regime led by drug addicts and spending such huge money is stupid, then perhaps we will be ready to listen to them. An example that we discussed yesterday at talks with the minister, and not very long ago in Johannesburg at the BRICS summit, is climate change. This is a global task that concerns everyone. There are many questions. How catastrophic is this really? Or is this a seasonal period that has happened in the past? There is a problem with the so-called green transition, which was accelerated several years ago, primarily by Europeans and Americans. They refused to invest in oil and gas. The Germans abandoned nuclear energy altogether. This is huge stupidity. And they invested and relied heavily on wind, water, sun, new renewable energy sources. Then it so happened that they themselves reduced the purchase of Russian gas and Russian oil. The sun shone infrequently, the tides were low and the wind blew calmly. But investment in green and advanced forms of oil and gas production has declined. That's why they have a crisis. When they are now trying to tell everyone that the war in Ukraine is the cause of this crisis, then this is a lie. Returning to the climate. Africans told us when we discussed the place of the Ukrainian topic in world affairs, that their place is not proportioned in Western propaganda and discussion.